City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte, State of California is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate public and staff availability. We'll call the meeting to order now, and I will ask our Vice Chair, Mr. Commissioner Hawley, to please lead us in the pledge. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Hawley. At this time, Karen, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Sullivan?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Commissioner Ania?
Here.
Commissioner Hawley?
Here.
Chairman Gitlin?
Here. All right, it is 3:30. It is the prescribed time. This is our public comment time. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. Now, again, if you speak on a subject off the agenda, that's fine. If you speak on a subject on the agenda, I will ask you to hold your comments to that part. If you speak now on that item, you will not recognize you when the agenda item comes up. So at this time, is there anyone who wishes to come forward? And, okay, do we have a sign-up list, Karen, or is there any particular order? Okay.
We'll fill it out.
Okay. All right, that's fine. I think we have control of it. Go ahead. Please identify yourself for the record. There's viewers. And the clock starts when you begin to speak.
Is her mic on? Karen?
Let's make sure everything is working. Technical?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Henry. I'm a resident of the county. My comments are directed today to the August 21st goal-setting workshop process. I would like to request that you ask the facilitator 2 questions during your conference call with him. First, what is his recommendation for public involvement in the process? In his email, he mentions 2 possibilities: comments to be reserved for a public comment period or comments on the proceedings as they develop. Which does he favor? Second, in his role as a facilitator, what has he observed about how other communities have handled the inclusion of the public in the goal-setting process to assure that their voices are heard? The answers to these questions have become more important because of comments made by you, Mr. Gitlin, at the last meeting. You stated that those of us who have been coming to meetings only represent ourselves and our personal opinions. That is not a correct statement. We represent many more people than ourselves, with whom we stay in contact by email and/or meetings. You've had several meetings also, most recently in last January, where over 30 people attended and a large majority spoke in support of the authority. The question of representation could be asked of each of you. 4 of you are elected officials, but you were appointed, not elected, to the Solid Waste Authority Board of Commissioners. What have you done to gauge community opinions about the handling of solid waste in Del Norte County? Mrs. Wilson was appointed to represent the public, yet many of her comments on policy issues do not match those of the public. For an example, Tuesday's front page triplicate article states that 3 of you want to scale back recycling programs. I would like to know who are the people in the community who would like less recycling opportunities. Who are you talking to? If there are any, their numbers are small. You talk about being concerned with costs to the consumer and then want to cut the most logical opportunities for the consumer to accomplish cost savings. It doesn't make any sense, especially since you, Mr. Gitlin, are so concerned with blight. The more things that can be recycled for free, the less chance there is that they'll end up on the side of the road or in the woods. So to conclude, you must make the goal-setting process as open and public-friendly as possible. That's the only way you will know what the public is thinking. And I can predict how most of the public will respond because they have expressed themselves at several well-attended meetings as mentioned above. They are happy with Recology services. They like how the transfer station is being run by Hambro, and they are pleased with the recycling opportunities developed by the authority staff. The grumbling would come from some businesses and landlords, but those are concerns that can and should be
I'll
addressed.
ask you to wrap up your
Yes.
comments. Thank you.
That is the work you should be doing instead of disassembling a system that is supported by the public and respected statewide. Thank you.
All right, next speaker, Mr. Miles. Please identify yourself, whether you're a city or a county resident.
Well, first, Mr. Kenley,
State your name.
Richard Miles.
Thank you.
I'm a city resident. First, I'd like to make a report of Monday night Solid Waste Task Force. We had an election. Well, guess what, Mr. Gitlin? There's going to be some changes because I'm the new chair and Pat Black is the new co-chair. At that meeting, we went over our bylaws, made some changes, and at our next meeting, we're going to discuss those changes and send them to Mr. Finnegan so the Board of Supervisors can approve the changes. The other thing we started to talk about was getting busy to do the 5-year plan. And at that discussion, I learned something that I find very fascinating, and the comments the lady that just made are important. Currently, if you weigh the tonnage that's going to White City, it's more than what we are recycling. In reality, the village idiot could tell you recycling is important. The other thing we're going to do at our next meeting, we're going to be composing a letter to Mr. Finnegan again to ask for the appointment of 3 members to the task force with the approval of the city. If you read the resource code, I'd like to make a suggestion. The resource code, the natural resource code, clearly states in it, now can I talk as a private citizen?
You can wrap up your comments if you would. I'd appreciate that.
It calls for members from other agencies. We need to appoint another person from one of the tribes. We need to appoint somebody, as the resource code clearly states, from the environmental community. And then I'd like to suggest we...
Richard, I really need you to wrap up. We have other speakers, so you're well over 3
Are
minutes.
there any other speakers?
Okay, Richard, thank you. All right. As always, we appreciate all your comments. It's a respectful thing just to go 3 minutes and a little bit of leeway. I thank you for the accommodation. There are other people who wish to speak, and we want everyone to hear so we can listen to you. Our next speaker, Mr. Lonsdale, if you would come up, please identify yourself as
Mr.
and your
Chairman,
city or
members
county.
of the board, my name is Bill Lonsdale, and I live in Crescent City.
Hold a second, Bill. Okay, continue, and your minutes start right now.
I've identified myself.
Okay.
I'm seeking clarification, Mr. Chairman, on the location for the 21st of August meeting. The agenda that we have says that we're adjourning to meet here in the Board of Supervisors room. The newspaper says it will be in the fire hall, which I consider to be a much better location for a workshop type meeting. And I would hope that we can get that clarified before this meeting is over today. I share the chair's concern about the quality of the sound system over there, but that shouldn't be an obstacle to having a better environment for the facilitator to do his work. Thank you.
And if I may, I'd like to answer your question with regard to the situs location. It will be at the Fire Hall on Washington. Yes, we are challenged by the sound system. However, this is not a meeting that's going to be recorded, which makes it a lot easier. Plus, the way the meeting will be conducted will be, as you know, everything's on one level. So everybody's aware the board or authority will step down from the dais and will be at the same level as everyone else. And that doesn't situate very well for this kind of a room to do that. And that is the protocol for that particular meeting. When you'll hear about this later when Mr. Supahan takes over that meeting and becomes the facilitator. So I hope that clarifies that. Okay, do we have another speaker? Any other speakers? Okay, please come up, identify yourself, city or county.
Hi, Craig Strong from Delnor County, up by Fort Dix. I'm not in the city limits. I'm addressing mainly topics under the 5th category of your agenda. It is with distress that I see the agenda's items for today's meeting. Items under category 5 includes expenditure of money and board members' time to pursue what should be a non-issue, reducing the function and effectiveness of our solid waste authority. It is clear from the director's report and other attachments in the agenda that the current administrative tasks assigned to the manager and acting director are falling behind, both in meeting mandated reporting and in carrying out the objectives of the Solid Waste Authority. You are so fortunate that you have Mr. Ward accepting the unacceptable workload in carrying out both jobs. But currently, this is failing to maintain the authority, with responsibility ultimately falling on the city or county if the state regulations are not met. The solution is easy. Spend the money, hire a competent director or manager, depending which role Mr. Ward takes. A new director will bring more money to the Solid Waste Authority in the form of grants to promote recycling and recovery. The solicitation of grants is not an option with the current burden on the staff. Taking out the trash is expensive. Hauling it to Medford is expensive. If we have less of it, we will have a fundamentally more efficient function of our authority. Having less waste through diversion and recycling is a no-brainer. Grants are available to promote this. An increase in recycling and diversion is truly the logical direction for the future of the county, the state, and our society, though you have on record a stated opposition to social change. Please try and remember during this and following meetings that the authority was created as a public service entity. It still is. And your responsibility as the board is to guide the authority to provide excellent public service. That's the role of the board. There is no inherent benefit to having a private entity provide such service. Rather, I see that as a liability to us, the customers. Please don't keep dragging us backward into more dysfunction and expense. Get the personnel hired, get out of the way, and let them do the good job that they have in the past. Thank you.
Do we have another speaker who wishes to come forward? And again, your comments are limited to 3 minutes, and there's some latitude there, but we'd appreciate the 3 minutes so we can move the meeting along. And identify yourself and city or county.
My name is Tommy Sparrow. I live in the county. I'm here representing Recology Del Norte as a general manager. Just wanted to let you guys know that my operations manager, Troy Bishop, been a long-time 27-year employee with the company, scheduled to retire in December due to surgery. His last day will be tomorrow. So I will be without a operations manager for some time. His job is posted. I do have 2 people here, one from Vallejo, one from Vacaville, that will be rotating in and out. But until we get that position completely filled, which I expected to do it in October, and someone worked with him through December. In this situation, there could be some hiccups somewhere down the road, and I'm just asking you guys to be understanding. I don't anticipate it, but I don't know. I mean, I've got people here from Vallejo, one from Vacaville. I have access of people down in Eureka, but they don't know Crescent City. They don't know Del Norte County. They're learning, but it's going to be a huge learning curve for whoever fills that position. I have informed, wow, Ted, you got a tie on. I've informed Ted that it's there's going to be a transition, and I just ask the board to be sympathetic. If we do have an issue, we will address it and repair it. I don't know that we will. I don't anticipate any, but this is a 27-year employee that just, boom, in 4 days gone. And it's an emergency situation that he's got to go. The recovery period is 3 to 4 months. His retirement date was set for the end of the year, so he's done. And there will be, I hope he's not watching this, there will be a retirement party, but that's after he retires, not now. That will be in January. It will be down at the Klamath new casino, hotel, restaurant. That's where he lives, and we will honor him at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. And Ted, if you would please, would you secure a Hallmark card of appropriate, and if you get it to me first, I'll make sure all the other commissioners get an opportunity to sign it, and anyone else who wishes to sign it. So thank you for getting that to me, and we'll get that off to your loyal employee. Thank you for letting us know that, Tommy. Okay, next speaker.
Hi, I'm Catherine Murray, and I'm a resident of the city and of the county. And I just wanted to point out an article from the July 2014 Western Cities magazine. I believe our city council members may have seen this, but it's titled "Product Stewardship Saves Money, Creates Jobs, and Reduces Waste." 25 years ago, California passed a groundbreaking law, the Integrated Waste Management Act of 1989, and it required cities and counties to develop policies and programs to achieve a waste diversion rate of 50% or the maximum amount feasible by the year 2000. The law also established California's landmark waste hierarchy of reduce, reuse, and recycle. And the reason I'm pointing out the product stewardship side of the recycling issue is that some members of this board think that we need to do less recycling. This is promoting more recycling with the product stewardship, in that companies that have products are taking back their products and recycling them, such as the paint industry and the mattresses that we are recycling right now. So if you would like a copy of this article for members that don't get this magazine, we can provide it to you through the city. And I just would hope that you would be educating yourself more on this issue. Thank you.
Next speaker. And Ms. Cooper, if you would please identify yourself for the record, city or county.
Eileen Cooper, County. I'm here because I was upset and disturbed by the news reports about how things are progressing for our solid waste authority. The public gave overwhelming support the last I attended a while ago to not privatize the most important key elements of this authority. And I think they were wise. And yet now, I hear the exact opposite. I think you're being penny wise and dollar foolish. You're sucking the most creative elements dry of this authority. The administration that can get you grants, the administration that can advance recycling, that in the long run is the key to reducing costs, to reducing blight, to helping us progress as as a society and not produce so much garbage. I don't understand. We were on the right path before, and now we seem to be off of that. So that's just my general sentiment and concern for this agency. Thank you.
Do we have any additional speakers at this time? Okay, Mr. MacArthur? Identify yourself, city or county. Thank you.
Don MacArthur, I live in the city. I'd like to address the comment reported in the paper a few weeks ago to the effect that the Solid Waste Authority should function more as a utility rather than a social change agent. I don't remember who was being quoted, but my opinion is that the agency has been doing exactly what we would expect a public agency to do. That is, it has been innovating and working to meet public goals. As I understand it, when we closed the landfill, the cost of transporting our waste rose, and the authority developed innovative programs to reduce waste. That's good management and just makes sense. I'm sure you're aware of the school district's experience. Once we became aware that our cost of disposal was going to go up, the district worked with Mr. Ward and Mr. Hendrick and with Recology to change our waste stream and to educate our students to recycle. As a result, we are saving $8,000 per month with a goal of $10,000 per month when we bring our larger schools online. Utilities commonly attempt to change behavior. Energy utilities encourage energy conservation. All across the state, in response to drought, water utilities are working to reduce water consumption. It is an old and even a conservative idea to use price signals to influence behavior. It makes perfect sense to me that the Solid Waste Authority would use its, would use its price structure to encourage recycling, given that the costs of transporting our waste are increasing. I am urging this board to support the work of the authority and not to try to fix what is not broken. Thank you.
Excuse me, could I ask a question, please? Sure. So I was curious about your rate savings. Was that rate savings after the new contract went in place? Is it savings from those rates, or was it savings from your prior contract, so before the new contract went in place?
It's savings, it's comparable to what we were paying previously and after the new rate, but what's changed is that our waste stream has changed. So am I answering your question?
Okay, so then the savings would be from the increases that were brought on with the new contract, because Mr. Rodney Jan was here and he provided some information about that.
Right.
$87,000 increase.
Our costs were going to go up, and so and that's the savings I'm talking about.
So, okay.
But and to my way of thinking, that's what the purpose of a rate structure is to change behavior in terms of, and use the price signal to influence the behavior you want. So I don't know how that affects precisely the cost to the authority of transporting waste, but what I would anticipate is that what's happening is that our savings is reflected in their costs also.
Right. I'm just clarifying. I know he had said that it was a $12,000 to $13,000 increase per month for the 9-month school cycle, and so then you're just saying there's
well, and that would be approximately for that's approximately the same figures, but it's that was the increase, and then we have the savings.
You know what, rather than discuss this now, I think
yeah,
we would probably...
I'll maybe call you about that later, just for clarification.
Because we may still have more public comments, and I'd like to keep them moving along. Thank you, Mr. MacArthur. Are there any additional public comments at this time? Seeing none, I will close public comments. I will bring it back to the board for comments such as this, or any other board commissioner member. wishes to make comments on anything that was
No,
said?
I just want, actually, I want to make sure I'm not misquoted again. I've never said that we shouldn't have recycling. I've never said that, and I do take offense at Mr. Johansson's letter in the triplicate, because I've never said we shouldn't recycle. What I said is we should share the cost of recycling. Right now, the business community is footing the costs. And I think if you really want recycling, which I recycle personally, which I said at the previous meeting also, then you should share the costs. If we're all about changing behavior, there is a cost that comes with it, and I think it should be shared. That's what I've said. So let's not put words in my mouth of what I've actually said, because you can check all the meetings. I've never said that.
Any other comments from commissioners on what was delivered in public comments?
Yes, I would like to say that
Commissioner Wilson.
I am a member of this community, and I represent a lot of the businesses, and which are also members of the community, because the comment was made here today that I'm not representative of the people, and again, I'm one of the entities that was asked to share this burden when, of course, my rates went up from $400 a month to $900 a month. With the
You're
new
talking about
contract.
commercial rates, right?
My commercial rates at Ocean World, when my neighbor went from $900 to $1,900 a month. Again, that's when I got involved. So there are many other businesses that I could give you some examples on. Of course, we have changed our behavior because, I now am hauling myself, and other businesses are as well. But again, we are part of the community, and it's been a big burden on the business community. And so I do represent a lot of people in the community.
Commissioner Hawley or Commissioner Nia, do you have any comments on public comments? If not, I'd like to say a few words after you speak.
My comments are very brief. Actually, it's to Mr. MacArthur's report. As I remember, I was employed by the school district at that time, and there was an $87,000 increase with the new rates. And I believe with the work with Recology, that $87,000 increase was mitigated, and it went back to about what they were paying before. And it sounds like it's even gotten better, maybe $8,000 a month better than that. But anyway, that was what it was. It was offset by the change in behaviors.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawley. And also, Commissioner Ania, do you have any comments? All right, I'd like to say something, because I feel like I see the same faces here. I feel like you're almost part of my family. Family is squabbling a little bit. We have differences of opinion. I see snippets of things that I've said that are taken out of context, like bells and whistles, when the whole statement has not been made. But absent from any comment here in this room is, where is $29,000? I have not heard one member of this community here at this coming up here telling us how well things are run, how wonderful things are. Well, $29,000 of your money is missing. And if you're happy with that, how well things are run, then I'm going to scratch my head a little bit, because it sits in my throat like a sideways toothpick when that $29,000 comes up and everybody talks about how wonderful things are, when in reality that money is gone and we may never see it again. So I'd ask you, no, you're not recognized. You're not recognized. This is my turn. You've spoken. I'd ask you all to look into what is you're saying and treat this issue fairly. What we're doing up here is good government. It is going slower than I would like, but again, that's how government works. Someone once told me that. Expect it to go slow. And we're doing our due diligence. So we're going to cross every T and we're going to dot every I, and we're going to get this thing right. So that is what my comments are. And if anybody has anything they want to say, what is exactly I said, not from the triplicate, then come up to me and ask me, and I'll tell you. Now, on that note, we'll close the public comments and we'll move on to the consent agenda. And we'll go here. First of all, are there any deletions, corrections on the consent agenda before we move forward?
Can I ask to have item 1.2 pulled for discussion, please?
1.2 is pulled from discussion.
And item 1.4 is not complete.
1.4, excuse me, Ted?
Item 1.4 on the agenda indicates that there's an attachment on the, as I was preparing the agenda, I was hoping that that report might also be done as one of the other reports is done, but that report is not yet complete and so should not be included as part of the
Okay, so are we
consent
deleting
agenda.
1.4 for discussion?
It's not yet ready. It's not
Okay,
yet.
so we really have here consent agenda items for items 1.1 and 1.3. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move that we approve items 1.1 and 1.3.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's take the vote on the consent agenda. Karen, if you would, please.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes?
Commissioner Ania,
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley,
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin.
Yeah, it would be yes. All right, let's pull out 1.2. I'm sorry.
4 o'clock, do we have?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the reminder. Mr. Ward, at 4, we're going to talk about 1.2. Do we have a special call that we need to make to Mr. Supahan at 4 o'clock? All right, let's get him on the phone. And in the meantime, I'd like to, all right, can we at least discuss this 1.2 until we get him on the phone with maybe a 2 or 3 minute delay? 1.2. Am I calling him or am I? No, you're going ahead. Okay, let me correct myself. Please call him and we'll wait. And for the record, this is item 5? 5.2.
Hello, this is Terry.
Terry Supahan, welcome to the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority meeting. This is Ted Ward.
Thank you for having me from Seattle, Washington.
Okay, I'll turn it over to the board at this time.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Ted. And
It's been like successful couple days.
Terry, can you hear me okay through the sound system?
Yes, I can. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Mr. Supahan, I'll be formal with you because
Very good.
this is a meeting. This is a discussion and possible action with relating to Terry Supahan regarding the special meeting regarding authority goals scheduled for Thursday, August 21st at 2 o'clock. So I'm going to turn this over to you at this time for your response.
That sounds very good. As you know, we've been communicating by email, and I saw the exchanges with your attorney regarding public comment, and I think that that's smart in the long run, not just legal, but for this process, I think it's important. And I would also ask you to consider, or the board to consider, allowing a public comment for interested people at the end of the session, so that the public had the opportunity both at the beginning, say what they needed to say, be facilitated, be respectful of time, move it through the process, but also at the end, after they've had a chance to hear the commissioners and the dialogue over the report and a conversation about goals and objectives, that you give an opportunity at some point at the end of the meeting for anyone interested to speak for 2 minutes, or what your normal process would be. I think that would be smart in the long run.
Okay, are you waiting for a response, Terry?
Yes.
Okay, I'm hearing lots of extracurricular noise, so I'll just try to respond this way. We are accounting for a public session. I would leave it open to the board to see how they want to move on it. I'm in favor of a public session, but I was going to do it before the workshop. But if you'd rather do, and I would like to do a one public session, because it can get very grueling and long with lots of people there, and do it at the end of the meeting. So I'm on board with doing a public comment period at the end of your presentation. Would that be acceptable to you?
However you and the board want to do it, I would be happy to help in either way. I just know that it's, my experience in the past is better for the organization to not look like it's trying to squelch public comment, but to try to find a way to facilitate consistent public comment through your public discourse so that you don't just appear that you're trying to stop it. So if you wanted to have the public session before, I'd be happy to listen in or help facilitate that, or I'm available to do it either way. So I think that's good thinking on your guys' part.
Okay, so let's talk about this among our commissioners. Well, let's operate by a consensus opinion, and I'll open this up to the commissioners. Would you prefer there be 2 public comment periods, or would you prefer we have a public comment period at the end of the meeting? That's how I'm seeing your request, Mr. Supahan. So I'm going to ask for input now from our commissioners. Do you have a choice?
Terry, this is Mike Sullivan. How are you doing?
Hi, Mike.
I think I'd be inclined to do the comment at the end of the session, or even at the beginning, either one of the two. But I would be inclined to stay with one.
Okay, Commissioner Hawley.
I'm actually a little bit different, as we all know. Hi, Terry. I think I prefer to see it in both spots. I think that the public is going to feel like they weren't heard, and we will have already made decisions by the time they get a chance to comment. So it seems like we need to do, maybe the second comment period at the end could be 1.5 minutes instead of 3 or something like that, and we could bring it down.
Yeah, I'd be good with that.
Commissioner Sullivan.
I'd be fine if we're shortening the comment period at the end to like 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, and then it's not.
All right, let's kind of process this and go through. Commissioner Ania, do you prefer 2 public comment periods, irrespective of the length, but would you prefer 2, or would you rather have the public comment period at the end of the meeting?
Well, you know, I kind of like the idea there of that compromise. If you could have the public comment first, and then you could have a second one that's short before you vote on anything, so that way, in case we missed anything, or someone, it's always good at a workshop that people that come write things down as we're doing it, because at the end, we should ask for that public comment, because they may say, you said this, is this what you want to do? And that would be short. It doesn't have to be long at the end. It could be a shorter public comment, because it tends to go on forever. And that's what we do in our city workshops. We allow for public comment at the end, just to make sure that we've covered everything before we take a vote, if we take a vote that day. So I would be in favor of both, but only the second one being shorter, because that's the whole program presented.
Commissioner Wilson.
I tend to agree.
Now, if we're agreement, and my vote on this would be moot because I'm seeing there's absolutely a consensus here, would you agree to, let's say, a public comment period of, let's say, 1.5 minutes and 1.5 minutes before and after? Or do you want to keep the model as 3 minutes / 1.5 minutes for the end? Because again, I can anticipate we'll have a large crowd there, and this can go a little longer. So we are talking about some considerable amount of time when you multiply those numbers times 25, 30, or even 35 people who wish to speak. So do we have a consensus that you'd like to make this as 1.5 minutes for each of the 2 public comment periods, or 3 minutes and 1.5 for the latter one?
Well, I'll do the compromise thing again. I'll say 2 minutes to start and 1.5 minutes to end.
Okay, we're getting there. Now, is everybody on board? 2 minutes and 1.5 is sort of a total of 3.5. And I'm not picking on this thing. We want to move the meetings along at the same time. We don't want to lose anybody because they have to leave for whatever reason. So, are you all right, Commissioner Hawley, for a 2 and a 1.5?
I guess I could live with that. It's
Okay.
just our community that comes and talks to us are kind of used to 3-minute sound bites. That's
Well,
what I'm thinking.
I'm understanding that. Let's go through the rest of the 2 minutes, or
This is a workshop for goal setting and review. I would think the people that come for that would, if they want to speak, would have it written down, exactly what they want to say for our goal setting. There's not going to be 100 goals. There's just going to be a few. And we've talked about some of our goals already. So I don't know that, I think the people that go there are coming specifically for that and would have notes on what they want to say.
so your
I'm
comment
saying,
is...
I don't think it'll take 3 minutes for each person.
So
And some people will have the same goals.
All right, I want to get it clear. 2 and 1.5?
That sounds fine.
Commissioner Wilson?
That sounds fine.
Okay. I'm on board with that at 2 and 1.5. And again, this is a consensus vote. This is not, we need 3 votes in the, 1 in the city and 1 in the county. This is just a consensus on how the protocol will be. So on that basis, we'll move forward on a 2-minute opening comment period for anyone who wishes to speak from the public, followed by, at the end, Mr. Supahan, after you conclude your meeting, there'll be a 1.5-minute public comment period. If we're all on board on that, Mr. Supahan, are you okay with that?
Yes, that sounds fine.
Okay, so we'll make that note accordingly, and Ted, if you would, on the agenda for that, please indicate that on public comments on that. And I think, Mr. Supahan, is there anything else you'd like to bring to the authority's attention?
If you could just give me or articulate on behalf of the board what your desired outcomes for the meeting. As I understand it, you want a conversation, a facilitated conversation on the report, on the R3 report, and a discussion about goals. I don't know if they're long-term goals or short-term goals, but goals for the authority.
Okay, and I'll open up to our commissioners right now on what is your wish that you wish Mr. Supahan to focus on. Does anybody wish to begin that conversation with him now?
I'll jump in. This is Commissioner Wilson, and basically what I think that you'll find when you read the R3 report is that they recommend that we need to be working towards the same goals, because it seems that sometimes or often that staff is at odds with the mission and vision of the current board. And if we were to just clearly spell out what our mission statement is, in my mind, a mission statement would be established. And then once we decide what our mission is, then we can set aside some goals on particular goals, and then the plan follows the goals, and that's how to get to those goals. So my understanding of the process, or what I'm hoping to get out of the process, will be that we come to an agreement about what the mission is for this particular body, and we taking into consideration R3 report, who again are professionals in the industry and have been through a lengthy process to give us this report, and then we'll develop a mission statement, and then after that, when we're in agreement, then we'll set goals, and then after the goals, then we'll kind of have the strategy on how to meet those goals. So I see mission statement, goals, and then strategy is what I'm hoping to get. I don't know how long that'll take, and if it can all get done in a meeting, I don't know. I haven't done a workshop like this.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. This is Terry Spahan again. I just want to be candid with the board that we could have the entire meeting and conversation around the report with some limited discussion about goals, but I just want to be clear that once you start talking about mission statement and strategy, you're starting really to talk about a strategic planning process, short-term and long-term for the agency, and obviously this meeting isn't set up for that. So I don't want to promise what I can't deliver. So I just want to make sure that all the board members understand what you're beginning to talk about, or at least what I hear is a strategic planning process, and I don't want to scare anyone away or have you roll your eyes and think, oh man, that's too expensive and too time consuming. But it's also something you can't do in a single meeting. So it's a different kind of process, and I just wanted to be clear about that.
Terry, what type of process, time frame wise, would you be anticipating if that's the direction the board was going in?
Well, quite honestly, the things that I've read about in the newspaper and have heard, and why I'm willing to step into the breach and to assist in having honest dialogue and a frank discussion from the public as well as the commissioners and staff is to talk about the report and if we could come out with a number of goals that the authority wants to embark on, I think that could guide the process. That I think I'd be willing to help you raise funds to hire another consultant to do or something in the future. But what I'm starting to hear the authority talk about is, and what I've been experienced in with other situations is, you're talking about a long-term strategic planning process that at least in Humboldt County was a 12-month process. So, and we were very committed to recognizing the difficulty that the elected officials had in the appointments, because we didn't want to go through a year process with one board and then have a new board seated and hand them a strategic plan saying, the old board went through the work on this and we hope you approve it. We got it done in a year, so I think at least a year, 6 to 12 months is a realistic process for most organizations.
Okay, any other commissioners wish to discuss with Mr. Supahan what they'd like to see come out of this meeting, the workshop?
Wow, given what Mr. Supahan said.
Why don't you identify so he knows who you're talking
This is Rick Hawley again, Mr. Supahan. Supahan, excuse me. I don't know that we can afford a long-term strategic planning process. We really have to move this thing along. But we would like some assistance, at least initially, to look at the major goals that we need to adopt, at least in order to decide what direction to go with the hiring of an executive director, whether it's going to be a combined position or not. I think that's what's on most of our minds, and we've actually expressed that in prior meetings. So I think going over the R3 report is going to be beneficial, but I don't think we should go over it extensively, because we are all pretty familiar with that report. I think I'm more interested in how we take that report and then try and condense it and get some kind of an action plan. And so I don't know. I think you'll find that philosophically, those of us who are here on the board have a little differences of opinion regarding how we should move forward. And I think that's what we're trying to resolve. And I don't necessarily have to be in on that discussion if you want to do it after I hang up, but it would be very helpful to me if the board could identify the 3 to 10 issue areas that they want to have discussion, because part of my facilitation that's been successful in the past is when I'm able to put a time frame on each of those items, so that if you could work that out, you say, well, we've got 3 issue areas that we really want to have discussion on, or 5 or 10 or whatever that is, and staff could email me what that essentially becomes an agenda, and we could begin to look at how much time each item you're going to give the discussion to. I can help you keep that train running on time, but it helps the more clear that you want to be. And I can understand that there's going to be differences of opinion on the board, but we should have that honest discussion and give it the time it needs at the meeting. So I don't know how many issue areas you have, but if you could figure out that part of it, that would be very helpful.
All right, Terry, let's hear Commissioner Ania. Did you have any comments at this time? Yeah. I would say this to you, Terry. It's Chair Gitlin speaking right now. This authority paid a great deal of money for a very good report. Some will say they agree with it, some will say they agree with parts of it. This R3 consultant's report is a tool, and that, I think, is your role, is to translate that tool for us. I'm particularly interested in the options, or even discussion of hybrid options as we move forward. And I will concur with Commissioner Hawley that pretty much we want to know the direction we need to go. I appreciate someone those saying we need to hire a director right now, and that's important, and by doing so, you preclude the other options, and I think that becomes self-evident. So I think what I would like to hear from you, Terry, is I'd like to have you discuss these options in the R3 report. And we'll hear from this a little bit later, hopefully as the authority makes some decisions on this agenda today. On the legal counsel Rice may very well be giving us those legal options as a result of the options there when we take that up later on in the agenda. So I'd be interested in having you dwell on the options and perhaps the repercussions or consequences or benefits of each one. So perhaps that can be a focus of part of the workshop.
Okay.
All right, now, before you leave, Terry, I want to do what's as best we can to give you public input, and we have people here in the audience, and I'm going to ask your comments to be less than the 3 minutes. If you wish to come up and address Terry on the phone right now through the microphone, I will ask you to keep your comments to under a minute so that we can hear what you as members of the public wish Mr. Supahan to consequence. So, does anybody wish to? Let's go do this real quickly. Thank you. Less than a minute.
I'm Elizabeth Henry, a county resident. I'd like to know, how would you work together with what the board wants to do, their goals, but yet there's a whole set of state laws. The board may want to say, we want to go this direction, but you have a whole other authority. How do you intertwine those so that you make your goals match with what you are supposed to be doing, the 75%
Okay, I got it. And I'm not cutting you off. You made your question, and then it repeated, so that's why I'm going to cut it off. Terry, did you hear that?
If I could restate the question, I think what I thought I heard was, how would I help to ensure that as we facilitate a question, to also make sure that it is complies with state law? Is that
I think
accurate?
that's the same. Ms. Henry, is that essentially what you're saying? Yes, okay. All right, is there anybody else who wishes to address Mr. Supahan at this time? And again, very quickly, it's a question. It's not a speech. And Eileen, if you would, please ask your one question.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I didn't actually answer the question. I just wanted to make sure I understood it. But I would want to say that I would rely on staff and legal counsel. I'm not an expert in state recycling and waste management law. What I am an expert in is trying to get to the heart of an issue and question and let all sides have their say, basically. And if the board, the majority of the board makes a decision, then I think it's the obligation of the board using its staff and legal resources to make sure it complies with all pertinent laws. So it wouldn't be me. I don't see that as my job. I see my job as trying to get to the heart of the issue and hoping to have honest discussion around the issues.
So noted. One additional question. Go ahead, Eileen Cooper.
I question the public.
Okay,
being
Eileen, I'm
able-
going to interrupt you. I'm going to ask you to ask Terry a question that you wish him. It's not about questioning.
Might not there be a better way to manage the public's input time than restricting their verbal input to such a small amount that almost negates the ability of some people to contribute?
Okay.
I was thinking like something written.
Hold on a second, Eileen, you need to hold your comments for a second. This is a streamlined conversation.
Okay.
Mr. Supahan, this is not a speech, this is not a question, this is a simple question, what you would like to cover. Can you please answer Mr. Supahan?
So like couldn't there be like a written input process?
Okay.
Where someone could go through and sort out the duplication or whatever so that the time would be efficient.
Mr. Supahan, you heard that?
I have absolutely no problem with submitting written testimony. That can always be helpful to an agency. I also would volunteer what I thought I heard in discussion going on that the authority was having before I talked. But as I mentioned earlier, having public comment, having a robust discussion with the public is helpful in the long term. And I would be willing to have an hour-long meeting before the meeting to get input, or if you want to set something up afterwards. But I always know it's difficult when passionate community members have things to say, and we're talking about limiting the comment to 1 minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes. I don't have any problem in trying to explore a better way to do that. I just want to let the board know that I'd be willing to facilitate a public meeting that was just the public having an opportunity to comment. So.
Well, we'll certainly have at least 2 opportunities at the workshop, a 2-minute before and a 1.5 minute, 90 seconds at the end of the meeting for those people to coalesce their thoughts and introduce them to you again. So are there any other folks here in the audience, public, who wish to address Mr. Supahan with an appropriate question of what you'd like him to cover?
Mr. Supahan, this is Bill Lonsdale, a member of the public. Could you describe how you plan to handle either written or verbal input from the public so that the points that are raised don't get lost during the workshop? Thank you.
That's a good question. And I would work with staff on trying to record the oral comments. I haven't talked to them about that yet, but that's always very important for the board and others to see what was recorded as discussion. The written testimony is I don't know if the authority has rules about that, but typically you would submit required copies, and that would be part of. You would probably do both. The situation where you had written comments as well as a few that you wanted to highlight in your allotted time.
Mr. Supahan, so you're aware, and I'm sure you've seen this, the R3 consulting reports does have written comments from the public included in that entire report. If you've not seen that, I hope you'll familiarize with that. Many of the people here in this audience have their written comments on record. As a matter of fact, I see several faces here, and I know factually that those comments from the public are included in that R3 report, so they'll see that again too.
Yes, but if there were additional comments, I'm assuming that, and I need to correct that assumption. The public will be allowed, if they desire, to write additional comments and submit them to the authority, or is that not being allowed?
I'm totally in favor, and I'm sure, and I'll ask the board for a consensus on this. I don't think we're always interested in someone's written comments that can be part of a report. Absolutely, there's no problem in disclosure on that, but I think what we're trying to do, we're trying to maximize this workshop and make it as productive as possible. And I know just by human nature, after an hour or so, people's fuel tanks go down and their energy levels goes down, and that's why we want to make it as productive as possible for not only you, but for those who are this entire authority board and the people who are in this audience, that we make this workshop as productive as possible, and that means what I'll call strict time management, and that would be the purpose of that.
Right, and I totally agree with you, Mr. Chairman. That's what I see as my primary role is making sure we move through a 60 to 120 minute session and be very respectful of time.
Okay, now are there any other comments from anybody at this time? And I'm going to ask you to please limit your statement to Mr. Supahan to a single question or comment, and then please sit down, and I recognize you next, Councilwoman Murray.
Good afternoon, Mr. Supahan. My name is Ralph Johansson.
Ralph, you're going to have to speak up to him.
Hi. Sure, thank you. My name is Ralph Johansson. Greetings, Mr. Superhan. My question is, in your experience, given the complexity of issues having to do with goals and purposes, wouldn't public input around a table or in some less formal structure be more helpful in arriving at our objective?
Okay, did you?
I would tend to agree with you, Mr. Johansson, in that, especially in topics that the public is passionate about, I would work with an agency typically on trying to design a process that there was an exchange, and informality definitely needs to be a part of that, so everyone respects the same ground rules and each other's opportunity to talk. But I also understand that has to be balanced with elected officials' need to deliberate and take action. And so typically, I would recommend that there be a different kind of process, but this is obviously, I'm coming to the party late, and I want to help where I can. And so if the board has determined that we're going to have public comment at the beginning and the end, what I'm hoping can happen, and it sounds, and it might not be able to legally, but we'll work with your legal counsel, is that rather than having the public confined to a single person talking for 1 to 3 minutes, it would be just included in the conversation and expect the public to recognize the same code of conduct and respect that I'm asking the board and staff to have during the majority of the meeting. So,
Catherine, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Catherine Murray. I'm a resident of the city in the county, and I'm also a member of the Crescent City City Council. You may have gathered from the questions that there's a great concern as to the public input and whether or not they're being respected and their questions are being addressed properly. And I'm wondering how you will address whether or not the board is really processing the questions that the public is asking. It's a very, very touchy situation right now, and the public is concerned that the board is not really listening to our questions. Thank you.
all I can say to that, because I don't have a dog in this hunt. All I can say is that I go into all of these meetings, these type of meetings, and I'm very aware of the fact that if I don't allow a person to speak who really wants to speak, it's gonna bite me later on. And so I tend to try to keep us all on the same time frame and encourage an honest discussion of the facts and the issues, and hopefully there's an exchange. And actually the board sounds like they are attempting to have public comment, but I know that from the earlier question asked, it usually is helpful if there's a separate meeting that the public is able to record their comments and their opinions, so that the board can use that as part of their decision-making process. But I'll do the best I can with the time that I have.
Okay, Mr. Sapahan, I think we've covered the gamut. So at this time, I think unless there's any other board comments, go ahead, Commissioner Hawley.
Hello, this is Mr. Hawley again. I have one quick question, and I don't know what the vision is for, we're going to have an active, lively discussion, and I think that's going to be good. But at the end, are we expecting Mr. Sapahan to provide us with a summary of his findings or any kind of a recommendation, or does he walk away and it's up to us to go ahead and formulate something from what we gather at the meeting?
Well, if I can respond to that, sure. Commissioner Hawley, I would just say to you that he is a facilitator, and by the very nature, he brings issues together. I think ultimately any decisions that would be made, there will be no decisions made at the workshop. Everybody is aware there will be no action taken at the next Thursday workshop. This is an information tool, and one in which Mr. Supahan will tie the issues together and bring it back to this, this authority in a manner which then we can establish the priorities. And I think I'm clear on that. Are you? Okay.
There'll be some kind of a summary.
I'll let Mr. Supahan respond.
I think I'd work with the staff on whatever summary was generated from the note-taking, because we haven't determined that yet, and my obligation would conclude at the end of the meeting, hopefully successfully, and that I would be available for any follow-up discussion or series of meetings that the board might want to have with the public or the board with itself. So what I understood my role to be was to facilitate some difficult questions and answers about the report in that meeting, but it wasn't going beyond that meeting unless you wanted additional facilitation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Supahan. I think we're clear. We have additional comments from Commissioner Sullivan. Go ahead.
Yeah, Terry, just one other question. In terms of public comment, in terms of in writing, would you like that in advance of the meeting?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear that. Could you repeat?
Yeah, I said in terms of the written public comments, would you like that in advance of the meeting?
That would be helpful for me to see, but lots of times there's not enough time to do that. But if I don't know if there's been a procedure established in the past, but certainly it would be helpful legally when you're having the meeting and it's a comment to a specific item on the agenda. I'm not sure how much time I'd have to incorporate that prior to the meeting, but that would be one of the things if you wanted me to follow up on, to make sure that staff and I coordinated to make sure everything that was submitted orally or in writing was included from the public prior to any summary report being submitted to the board.
Any other comments from the board? Okay. Mr. Supahan, thank you very much for your time on this telephone discussion, and the public has been heard. The authority members have also been heard, and you have heard all of this, and you'll process this in a way which we will see you next Thursday at 2 o'clock at the Fire Hall on West Washington Boulevard, and we will officially then turn the gavel over to you, and we'll look forward to seeing you at that time.
Very good, sir. Thank you, commissioners. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, I think we're good on that. We'll close item number 5.2, and we will go back to item that was pulled from the agenda by, I believe, Commissioner Wilson. This is I'll read it. Approve the rehiring of Rose Repond as a refuge site attendant at Range 28, Step C, in acknowledgement of her prior experience with the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority between 2004 and 2012. Commissioner Wilson.
Yes, I just had a question regarding this, and I had spoken with Mr. Ward earlier in the day in that Rose had ascended, I guess, from the gate position into an administrative position when she left. And so the reason that I pulled this was because, just to clearly explain, that when she comes back as a refuse site attendant, my question was, is she being paid in the Step C as was her prior wage, or does she come back in at the same range as the other gate attendants? And so Mr. Ward explained that Range 28 is what's used for all of the gate attendants, and that because of her longevity, she is previously with the authority, she is at a Step C at this time. And so I just wanted clarification that she wasn't being paid, or as she had promoted, that she wasn't getting that wage for a different job description. And so that's That's what I found out in regards to this 1.2.
Yes, when Ms. Repond last worked with the authority in 2012, she was administrative assistant and had worked at range 40, step E. So we're recommending that we hire her at a slightly higher than beginning range at a refuse site attendant, even though that's a step down from where she was previously, and a lower position. But she's interested in returning to the work with the agency, and we're happy to have her, and feel that it's just fair and proper that we acknowledge that she has previously worked with the authority, and that therefore we'll have reduced training time in getting her up to speed.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the rehiring of Rose Repond as refuge site attendant. 1.2 consent agenda was pulled off. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And seconded by Commissioner Holly. And council, do we need public comment on this?
Yes.
Okay, public, you're welcome to come up and talk about Rose.
Norma Williams with Delaware County Employees Association, SEIU 10-1. I only have one question. I don't have any opposition to the rehiring. However, was the union, since you are part of the local, was the union at any time ever notified of this?
Of the vacancy?
One of the vacancy and two of the process that you went by to rehire.
No, I did contact the county personnel department to see what was the appropriate process, because we have been having staffing challenges, and so I was aware that Ms. Repond was available, and so I asked if we needed to go through a public process if we were to hire her, and they informed me that I did not.
Still, the site attendants are part of the local, and so the local should have been notified. I just wanted to remind you of that in terms of process.
Thank you for the reminder, and in future I'll try to do better.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So before you go, Ms. Williams, I just want to make sure I understand this right. So are we saying that we need to fly these positions? All right, is this a protocol change?
The information that I had from the personnel department was that because we did have a fairly urgent staffing situation, this was replacing a person that was leaving employment with the authority, and so I was informed that I did not have to go through a formal hiring process and open up the position again if we had a person who had experience in that position. So that's.
And this is a union position.
It is.
So I think maybe as a courtesy in the future that we CC them when something like this is going on, so they're aware of it. I think you should be part of the process, and
True.
I would ask that for future hirings like this, as if it's a union position, that there be a courtesy CC on this.
Sure.
Okay?
I appreciate
All right.
that. Thank you.
All right, let's move on, and we'll take, we have a motion, and we have a second, and any other board comments at this point? Then I'll ask for the vote.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Ania?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. Okay, we have, let's see what we've got here. Let's go to, we have no landfill closure items, post-closure items to discuss, no collection franchise items to discuss, no transfer station items to discuss. So we've already moved to 5.2. Let's go back to 5.1, discussion, possible action regarding authority mission statement. Mr. Ward.
This, in your agenda packet, you do have a staff report, and generally this was added to the agenda, and so the staff recommendation is that the authority board decide which additional elements of a strategic plan are to be considered and possibly adopted, and how such elements are to be drafted, reviewed, and adopted. There has been discussion of mission statements and goals, and so I have a summary of some of the elements of a strategic plan, and generally they will include a vision statement describing what the organization aspires to be, a mission statement defining the fundamental purposes of the organization, describing why it exists and what it does to achieve this vision, a summary of values shared among the stakeholders of the organization, and a strategy describing the activities, courses of action, and allocation of resources to carry out the mission within the context of values. Unlike a strategic plan, what the authority board has had historically to guide its actions are the purposes in the adopted, first amended joint powers agreement adopted by the entirety of the city and the entirety of the county, and the goal work plan objectives that are reviewed semi-annually. So I've attached those for consideration, and also generally in the analysis, I thought I'd do a quick review to see what other agencies in the county had, and I was not able to find that the County of Del Norte or the City of Crescent City had mission statements. So we would, if they did have mission statements, we want to make sure that ours would be compatible. There are, however, mission statements for the Civil Office, Child Support Services, Veteran Services, and Friday Night Live, and they're far enough afield from our activities that I didn't feel that those were worth copying and repeating.
Mr. Ward?
Yes?
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm sure the city of Crescent City has a mission statement. Police Department has a mission statement. I can get that, we should have one. It's in our strategic plan.
Oh, okay. I apologize for missing those.
It might not be on computer, but...
I looked on the website and I sent out emails to both the county CIO and the city manager and did not receive a reply.
I'm almost 100% sure. I'll find it and get it to you. But that's fine.
And I welcome that input, and like I said, to the extent that they exist, ours should be compatible.
We should probably make it so more people can see it.
I have included examples of mission statements from other agencies that have similar responsibilities, and then I'd like to call attention to a handout from Commissioner Wilson, who prepared mission statement ideas, and apparently she tried to email that to me so that it could be handed out beforehand, but there was a hiccup in that process. So we just
Well, if I may just interrupt just for a second, because I've read all of the mission statements that you have on your narrative, but the board has not heard until this very moment when we've looked up this paper. So if it's all right with you, Commissioner Wilson, and there are 7 of them, you've introduced this, would you mind reading those to us? It's not going to take very long because they're actually pretty brief. Would you please indicate what these mission statements that you've secured are all about?
So basically, as opposed to reinventing the wheel, these mission statements come from different solid waste management agencies around the state, and was able to go and look at several of them, and they vary. Again, the first one starts off with the mission of the Solid Waste Authority is to provide the most economical way for ratepayers and JPA members to manage the waste resource streams and still be in compliance with state law. The second one was very short. It said the authority's mission is the management of Del Norte County's solid waste and recyclable material in an environmentally sound, cost-effective, efficient, and safe manner. Or the next one was the mission is to promulgate and implement a plan to manage waste disposal in our county. In keeping with this mission, each program or activity conducted by this agency will strive to direct our human and financial resources to those areas where our goals and objectives can be achieved, guided by common sense, accountability, and compassion to assist all the people in Del Norte County in maintaining and improving our quality of life. Or the next one is to protect the public's health, ensure 100% regulatory compliance, provide excellent customer service at an affordable price, and to maximize the reduction, reuse, and recycling of solid waste materials where economically viable. Let's see, there's a couple more here. Next one is to ensure the safety of the public we serve, to ensure 100% regulatory compliance with existing laws, and to, where economically viable, maximize the reduction, reuse, and recycling of solid waste in Del Norte County while providing excellent customer service at an affordable price. This is, I think, the longest one here. It says the authority exists solely for the purpose of providing the best possible services to our customers, the citizens of Crescent City and Del Norte County. We are committed to providing these services with honesty, integrity, compassion, fairness, and a commitment to excellence. We are committed to the long-term financial stability. Decisions will be driven by our commitment to provide the best services possible in a financially sound and responsible manner, given the economic realities facing our community. And these are the last two. The mission of the authority is to ensure a safe and healthy environment for future generations. The Del Norte County Solid Waste Authority operates recycling programs, cleans illegal dumps, and offers educational services on recycling in Del Norte County. And the last one is the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority provides for the proper management and disposal of all solid waste generated within the within the borders of Del Norte County, using practices that ensure the sanctity of the county's environment and that are consistent with the goals and objectives of the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors and the Crescent City City Council. So those are the mission statements. I don't know if they'll be available online at all, but I didn't.
Well, I'm
I guess
going
they'll-
to,
they're,
first of all, thank you very much, Commissioner Wilson,
yeah,
for reading
so-
those. I was taking some notes as you were reading them. I think what we'll do is we'll include these mission statements as part of the narrative on 5.1 and to include those in there. Is it, if we're going to take action on this, we'll open it up to the public for input. Is this something that we can delay for the next meeting while we kind of digest this and process these? Or is it the board's pleasure to move on one of these mission statement ideas at this time? We should table it until the September meeting. I'll ask for a consensus and input from my colleagues here.
Chair, I would suggest that we do wait till next month. You may get some more things next week at your workshop, and it'll give you a chance to go over these, eight of them, to choose which one may fit, or you may want to take some out of each one. But I think it would be a good idea when you're setting your goals.
Commissioners, is there a consensus with Commissioner Nia's?
I concur with Commissioner
Yeah.
Nia.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm hearing that we should agendize this for the September meeting, that these will be included in the September report. Well, it would be after the workshop, and then the next meeting, regular meeting would be in September.
Well, would you like analysis prepared for that meeting so that maybe we narrow down or consolidate? Are you looking to take action in the September meeting?
Well, I think once, again, seeing this for the first time, Ted, and I kind of want to read it quietly and read it again. That's what I do, is read things a couple, 3 times, and then I kind of process of elimination, select the ones that I think are the most appropriate, either from your list or from the list that Commissioner Wilson just provided. That's how I would work. I'll defer to the
I have
other
a
commissioners.
suggestion. Maybe the commissioners can look at the ones that they like and email that to Ted, and he may get 2 or 3 of them that are most popular and some that aren't, and then you can narrow it that way.
Okay. Is that
Is that
the
okay with you?
consensus of the rest of our board here on item number 5.1?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, and I just really brought this up for discussion today because it's the only way I can really pass out information is in a public venue like this. So, again, these are just from other authorities around the state, and there's some really good ones here that I think would work well for us. Just kind of have to come to a consensus on that, and I think it is a good idea if everybody maybe pick their top 3 and
And then the public input will be able to be posted on the September agenda, and then we'll be able to discuss it with some knowledge. So I think that's what we'll do. If we would, Ted, if you'll have these, we're going to email you our comments on these, and then we'll include them in a September with yours too, so that we have a full range of options. I mean, if you have a lot of options, and then you select, which one do you select? And there's different criteria for that. So if that's the case, then we'll defer that into the next meeting. Okay, so that covers 5.1. Yes, Mr. Johansson, there wasn't any public comment on this, but come on up and don't speak from your seat. Come up here. And on this 1.5, I really don't want to get into a lot of talk about actions that are not taken, but go ahead, sir.
My point is very simple. We've just been read a series of statements mission statements. We don't digest that. Is it going to be online and when?
Okay, and I'll repeat this. So Mr. Johansson has a very good question. Yes, Mr. Johansson, this is going to be on the September agenda. It will be posted, and it will be posted after the commissioners have weighed in on which direction of these options, all of them, and it will be on there, and then it will be in an ability for you and any member of the public to digest these options at a time frame when everyone, not just hearing it, but gets a chance to read it. So I hope that clarifies that. Okay, let's move on.
I had one more thing
Yes.
on 5.1.
Go ahead.
Within 5.1, we were provided, it's the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority work priorities. And I've been going through these and doing some comparison, and I'd like to put forward changing these, if everyone kind of has a chance to take a look at page 1 of 8. And basically, it's the second item that it says with the black circle and the white star. It's very, very broad, and what I'm noticing as I'm going through these and comparing them to what was listed in the R3 report is that we have a lot more of them. And then as I read this, that seemed to be mandated, and as I read it more carefully, I realized that it would be easier for us if we were to specifically separate out the state and federal mandates, and then regulations and contracts separately from the authority adopted plans. So one is kind of an outside what's been put on us. And then the second one are the authority adopted plans, because there are multiple things within this work priorities that are internal. And just for clarification, there are specific things that we cannot get out of that are state and federal, and I would like to have it distinguished separately. So I would put forward, I don't know if it needs to be in the form of a motion, that in any of the authority adopted plans be designated separately from the state and federal.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but we probably have to put it on September's meeting, I would guess, as an action on it, because we can't take an action on it now, but.
Why not?
Well, hold on a second. Is it not the purview of the chairman to direct the acting director to delineate what are mandated programs and what are optional programs? I'm sorry, sir?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It can be
Okay,
done under the
so
chair's prerogative.
rather than agendizing this.
We're not voting on anything.
We're not voting on anything. I'm hearing Commissioner Wilson very clearly, and we want to move the process along, as I hear people want to move this process along. And on the next report, which we will bring it up, but I think it's important that we know what is and what is not state, and what is not federally mandated, and what are optional services. So if you can provide that for us in detailed form, we'd appreciate that. Okay, so let's move on from that would be item number 5.1. Commissioner Wilson, were there any other comments on 5.1? Okay, we move forward. We have discussed 5.2. We're at 5.3, discussion possible direction to legal counsel to prepare of legal analysis of the necessary steps to implement R3 final report, options 1 through 4. Now, I'm going to defer to you, Counsel Rice, for your input on this. What this authority wants to know is, and we're going to direct you to find out for us, hopefully in a very short period of time, if we vote accordingly, is what are the legal ramifications of these options. So that having been said, Commissioner Rice, is that your understanding of what the board is going to ask you to do?
Well, I think
Counsel Rice,
it's something that deserves a little bit of discussion, but my understanding of what you'd like me to do is advise the board on what the legal procedure and the legal ramifications of adopting any of these options 1 through 4 would be, so that when you're considering at some future date possibly adopting one of those options, you know what the process is that you legally have to go through, and you also know what, legal risks, if any, there are.
Okay, before we open it up to the other commissioners, is this information something you can provide to the board members through email in a relatively short period of time, and I say specifically before our strategic options workshop?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I will bring it to the board's attention first before we bring it to the public's attention for input on discussion and possible action to legal counsel to prepare a report and legal analysis of the necessary steps to implement the R3 final report, options 1 through 4. Commissioners?
Well, I have a comment. I was, in reading this, and I realize I'm the alternate, but reading this today, earlier I was wondering if we're putting one step in front of the other, of not listening and having the workshop first and then going to that. But listening to our facilitator today, he specifically said we should have the legal stuff at the workshop to know if you could do it. And so he specifically told us that. And so I think we need to have it before. Usually I would say to have it afterwards, but he said to have that before to see what the steps are if you're talking about any of those options, to have it before. And he specifically said that to us, so that's my comment on that.
Commissioner Wilson, I'm sorry, Commissioner Sullivan, you had a comment. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, really, you're only looking, option 1 is to keep it the same, so really, you're just looking for 3. It would be good to know what are the steps for each of the options. That's why we paid for the report, so.
So interpreting that, we'll have a little better hourly rate from our council, right? You won't have to do one. How much that will save, we'll see. So are you saying we don't necessarily need to legally analyze the existing model, Commissioner Sullivan, of option 1?
I'm guessing we're good.
Yeah, and even the other ones are somewhat overlapping, so.
Okay. Well, I'm gathering this is going to be a fairly streamlined process. Commissioner Holly, go ahead, you were recognized.
I just have to admit that I too was thinking that we're getting ahead of ourselves. We should do the goal-setting process first and then decide what options we kind of are leaning toward and then spend the money on attorney's evaluation. I mean, we're not really bound by the 4 options that are in the R3 report. I mean, we may want to do something different or a combination of 2 or something like that. And then are we going to go back to the attorney and ask for another opinion? I just think it's kind of a blank check. I don't know what the cost will be, but I think we need to analyze that before we ask our attorney to go out and do a bunch of work. That's all.
Commissioner Wilson, did you have a comment on this particular item on these options? And again, it would be options 2, 3, and 4.
Well, again, as Commissioner Ania said, I'm in favor of having this for the meeting.
Okay, and I'm of the same sort, and there may be very well, Commissioner Holly, a hybrid version of this, but I think it never hurts to, especially hearing Mr. Sapahan today, it does not hurt to know the legal aspects. There's words in the air like Costa Mesa and what have you, and I would like to hear a little bit about the direction we're going, that our efforts will not be for naught. So before we open up to public, I'll entertain a motion right now.
Chair Gitlin?
Yes?
I feel obliged to inform the board that this is not a budgeted expense, and we do not yet have a cost estimate of how much this endeavor would be. And if as the person who reports to the board about fiscal issues, I would very much appreciate that information.
So I guess my question would be, because legal analysis was done on the R3 report without the board's approval to begin with, you directed staff to do a legal analysis of the R3 report without board approval.
Clarify my memory on that?
It's your director's analysis you directed, and there's also legal analysis that followed after that. So my question is, I guess I'm confused as to, now it's an issue, but it wasn't before, in terms of directing legal staff.
The R3 report was an endeavor of the board that was very clear, and part of my obligation as acting director is to inform the board of repercussions of your discretionary actions. And so, to the extent that there were options in the R3 report that the board might pursue, I felt that the board needed to be informed of the potential actions associated with those, the potential repercussions, excuse me.
So that's what we're trying to do right now too, because those are, there was only one repercussion that really on that legal analysis looked at, and this one would be looking at all of them, essentially.
And I
Other
would-
commissioners?
I would say that I don't think it's going to take very many hours, would you say?
No, I think the bulk of the work was done back then. So obviously that analysis won't need to be done over again. You know, I'd estimate between 2 and 4 hours, just depending, since I'm not sure.
All right, this isn't an amount of expense that's, even at attorney's rates, is not an exorbitant figure, Commissioner Rice. And I know factually how much time I use and call you up, and which is not always the case where I anticipated, and we get bills on that. So I'm not saying this is, I don't see this as a prohibitive kind of item. But that being said, I'm going to entertain a motion before we open it up to the public for discussion. I'm going to entertain a motion to instruct our county council to prepare this report on options 2, 3, and 4 in a time prior to, well before our meeting of the strategic options meeting. So I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Do we need a motion or just direction?
Or if it's a direction, then I will so direct. I'm not sure it's an agendized item, and it's an action item. So I think I think we can have a motion on this. Do I have a motion on this? The motion is, I'll repeat it. Do we have a motion to instruct our counsel, legal counsel, to give us a report on the options 2, 3, and 4 of the R3 report prior to our strategic options workshop, August 21st?
So moved.
Okay, second?
And I'll second that.
Okay, now we'll open it up for discussion to the public. Anybody wishes to address on this, please come up.
Catherine Murray, point of order. Which rules are you following, Robert's Rules of Order or Rosenberg's Rules of Order?
Rosenberg's.
Because you're supposed to get public input before you make a motion. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have a public comment? Mr. Lonsdale?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Lonsdale again. This is a question about procedure. The agenda says that we're going to be discussing legal counsel's advice on R3 report options 1 through 4. Your motion is for 2 through 4. What happened?
What happened with that is option number 1 is what we're doing now, so they don't need to do that. That's the option we
Mr.
have
Lonsdale,
now.
1 has already been vetted.
That's what we have.
1 is the existing model that we've been operating on for years and decades. So to have our council spend valuable time looking at 1 would seem to be duplicative. It wouldn't be necessary. So the ones that are the new options are 2, 3, and 4, and that would be the reason for that. Okay. Are there any other comments?
Elizabeth Henry, county resident. My suggestion would be to save you money. Why doesn't the council just bring back what she had written before, which is the Costa Mesa actually decision, and that's basically it, and review it at the workshop, depending on which direction you're going, and then have her do any final work. I think you are putting the cart in front of the horse and asking her to do work she might have to redo. And again, I have to say, I don't like the sound of something already being looked at as legal when no one's made a decision on that's the direction we're going to go. I think Mr. Hawley has said, you don't have to do the 4 options. There are all kinds of alternatives, so why are you focusing down on this? I think you have, maybe Council Rice would disagree with me, but I think you have a pretty good basis of knowing what options privatizing or contracting out, what the repercussions might be. So that would be my suggestion, and not whatever the rates are, it's still probably several $100s to do that. And it seems like with all the questions about costs and saving money that this would be one place you could save money. The other thing was just, I don't think that the facilitator said you should have the information before, because he said that in answer to my question, because I was wondering how you match the state laws and goals, and he said afterwards that she could review those and any other legal points. So that was my understanding of his answer to me, so thank you.
My understanding was that he wanted that ahead of time to use in the discussion.
I heard that
We
also.
can- That's what I heard.
Okay,
In fact,
now,
I heard that.
are there any other public comments?
Norma Williams with Delmar County Employees Association, SEIU. I discussed the current contract that the site attendants have with the local, and they say that it expires in April of 2016. So I think you need to keep that in mind, that there is an existing contract. It is legally binding, and any action contrary in violation of that, whereupon this authority breaks that contract, will definitely have repercussions from the local. Thank you.
And that's why we have attorneys.
That's exactly
Okay,
right.
are there any other public comments at this time? Then I will bring it back to the board with apologies to Ms. Murray about the protocol and having the public speak first. We always want to have you heard, so we'll move forward now. And at this time, and Karen, if you would poll the vote. And is everybody clear that it's options 2, 3, and 4 that will be legally vetted by our county council? And upon instruction, forthwith, Ms. Rice, you'll get that information back to us. Okay.
Would you like me to read what options 2 through 4 are?
Well, I think at this point, we're all very familiar with,
Okay.
I don't think it's a bad idea. Go ahead, Mr. Ward, please read.
Option 2 is to reduce management and administrative staffing levels to, quote, support the status quo, and the 2 bullet items are combining the executive director and program manager position and combining the administrative assistant and account clerk staff positions. Option 3 is contract the executive director position, which is essentially the same as option 2, but making that solid waste manager position a contract employee. And option 4 is contract scalehouse staffing to the private sector.
Thank you. Okay, Karen, if you would poll the vote.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
No.
Commissioner Ania?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
And Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. So Commissioner, Council Rice, you have your instructions on that. We'll move on to 5.4, discussion and possible approval of an agreement with Smith & Newell Accountants to complete an audit of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority's financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2014, in the amount not to exceed $9,200. Mr. Ward.
This is our regular annual external audit, and there is anticipated some cost savings from having the same firm that provides those services to the county provide them to the authority, as there is quite a bit of overlap between the county's accounting system and the authority's accounting. So staff recommend approval.
Move to approve.
Second? Anybody?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. I'm going to say, do we need public comment on this, or should we have done this according to Robert's or Rosenberg's Rules of Orders? I'm a little confused on which R to follow. So going that way, let's poll the vote.
Wait, you do need public comment.
Public comment
sorry.
prior to action.
Go ahead. We have a movement and a second. A motion and a second.
No. Okay.
All right.
There's
Public comments.
comment. Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Ania?
Yes.
And Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. 5.6, discussion, possible action regarding reintroduction of ordinance 2014-02, an ordinance on the Board of Commissioners.
Point of order, is 5.5, did we pull that?
I'm sorry, I read right by it.
But I did have a question on 5.5 since you're going on
let
that.
me roll it back, roll the tape back. I jumped right over it. I crossed through the wrong one. So let's go to 5.5. Let me first announce it, and then we'll have a discussion. Discussion, possible action on a budget revision and/or budget transfer of fiscal year 13-14 in the amount of $200,000 or less. Now, Commissioner Sullivan, did you have a question?
Yeah, there was no documentation to back it up. I don't know what the 200,000 is for.
I handed out, and I apologize for not having this prepared ahead of time, but we do have challenges in terms of staffing and information availability, and this is actually a fairly common process as we wrap up the prior fiscal year. And so essentially we're looking at which budget lines had money and which ones were overspent, and we're balancing those out. So it is considerably less than the $200,000 placeholder that I put in the agenda. The budget transfer before you is for $46,616. And it's significantly, even with these transfers, there will remain a deficit in one of the budget lines of $16,743, and I have assurances from Clinton Shad that those bills will still be paid, and I've asked him here to explain the process by which we're wrapping up the fiscal year.
Mr. Shad, would you approach and please give us that explanation? And just for the record, please identify yourself and position.
Clinton Shad, Donut County Auditor Controller. Yeah, we worked with Ted yesterday on this budget transfer, trying to shift available funds around to pay end of the year closeout costs. And there is going to be a deficit in one of your line items. I think it's the one we kept it in was the payment to Hambro Waste Solutions Group. And what happened, and you have good cash flow with solid waste. So you have cash always coming in and cash going out. So there's no concern of, even though you're going over budget, your cash flow is good enough to cover these costs. You have more cash starting in the year, cash going through. But in the budget process, that's your snapshot of July 1 to June 30th, what this board approves. We'll spend X amount of money based on X amount of revenue. And in this last 12 months, this board has spent more money than was approved. Roughly $16,743 exceeds your budget, which would be into the red. And I did a quick analysis of how that happened, where it came from, and it comes down to a couple things. So one, for the board's knowledge, whenever you do a classification revision, or excuse me, a budget transfer, you're moving money from one line item to another, meaning one line item you've approved is now overdrawn by an amount of money. You're hoping that you have savings in another line item to cover those costs. As the year goes on, you move money around. It's not uncommon. But what's happened here is you've had 4 major expenditures that were not part of the budget, that were not approved by this board last year for that time period. Those being professional services of $58,000 above approved budget, legal services of $9,300 above approved budget, treasurer services of $14,000 above approved budget, and then you had a severance package which was not in that, also above budget. So when those all come in, those are large amounts of money above your budget that you had approved. You're still only coming in 16,000, say, to the red, but you would have had plenty of budget and plenty of money had you not overran those line items by that far.
Mr. Shad, can I just interrupt and ask you a quick question? We had a budget item which may not have been budgeted for, which was the R3 report, which I'm going to say is about $33,000. Okay. Is that in that figure reflected in this amount?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if we had normally, and I would say normally, we don't normally have complete analyses of Del Norte waste operations on a yearly basis, that was an exigent expense. $33,000, I don't think that will, hopefully we'll use that money as a tool. So the fact that we're 16,000 into the red, keeping in mind that we had a $33,000 allotment for a special consultant's report, I'm not disturbed by that.
Well, it's just important for this board to realize. I know a few years back it ran in the red every year for several years, and that board at the time was a little bit surprised of what had happened. It ran the black the last couple years, since about 2008, I believe, until 2013, and now you're going back again in the red. You've overspent your funds available, but it's important this board knows that up front so that you're not coming a year from now saying what happened last year, why are we overdrawn? Well, overspent, and that's what's happened this year.
And as far as the revenue, I was noticing the revenue had dropped off $200,000 from what it was in year ending 2012.
12 or 13.
12. From 12 to 13, it went down $200,000, the amount of revenue coming into this board. And I'm curious, I have had a hard time getting current numbers to see where we're at as far as our revenue. Again, the more that is recycled, the less revenue that's coming in. And so again, I have been concerned about the trend for the revenues.
Well, if you look at, say, June of 14, you're going to see a significant drop in revenue.
Again?
But those numbers are not finalized yet. We have a large amount of money, say $250,000 in accounts receivable, has not been posted, and that is due to lack of backup documentation, which my office is working with solid waste staff to get that posted and get that taken care of for you. But we can't post figures until we get the backup we need, and solid waste staff has been busy working, but we're getting through it, and they're shorthanded. But even with that being posted, your budgeted amounts are still in the red.
All right, one question begets another one. So you're not accounting for $250,000 worth of income during the month of June?
We will account for it. We haven't accounted for it
Which
yet.
is within the fiscal year ending June 30th. And you're saying even with that consideration, the authority is still operating in the red? To the
You're operating in the red just on your budgeted figures, just saying, not talking about actual what you received for the year as far as revenue goes and how it's balancing out. I'm talking about, you said we would spend $2.5 million or $3.5 million and get $3.5 million in revenue. Just revenue comes in at $3.5 million, which we're still putting those numbers in. That comes in dead on, you didn't bring in any more money than you thought, you still overspent your budget by $16,000.
Commissioner Sullivan, you had a comment?
No, we projected at the beginning of the year, we're going to spend X number of dollars, and what he's saying is we spent $16,000 more than we projected.
We also projected that the revenue coming in from Hambros would be, I think it was $30,000 less, and as we got into the fiscal year, we realized that the amount that we budgeted, what the projections were not matching up with what the actual numbers, but that was never adjusted in the budget process either. So that's why I was asking about revenues.
You have your revenues coming in, but this board's worked very diligently on looking at different ways to cut costs and different R3 reports and different options there, so it's important that you know that everything you're working towards still adds the costs, and those might be one-time costs that might not happen again, but I don't want this board to be blindsided that when you get your report from Spencer Newell that says, hey, by the way, you're in the red.
No, I very much appreciate this comment you're making, because it puts me on, all of us on notice. We need to tighten it in, and I don't want to speak for you, Commissioner Holly, but you and I certainly can agree on we're loath to spending money. I'm more than mortified by spending any more than we have to get to where we need to go. And I know, I don't want to speak for you, Commissioner Holly, but do you have a comment? Do you have a comment, or do you want to disagree with that?
No, we'll leave it at that.
You'll leave it at that, okay. We all both agree on money, and Mr. Schadt, thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. And Mr. Ward is aware of that, and we're aware of it, and we'll see what we can do to make that red a color of black in a very short period of time. So where do we stand on this?
So staff suggests approval of this budget transfer as presented for $46,616.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. And
Second.
And is there a second?
Second.
I have it from Commissioner Ania for a second.
Wait.
We have a motion to approve for the budget.
We need public comment.
Oh, we need public comment first. Okay.
So I'll withdraw my motion.
So will I.
Okay, back it up. Public comments, please. Commissioner, hold off, okay? This is on the budget.
I just
This
have
transfer.
a question that came up when Commissioner Wilson talked about $200,000 less in revenues, and I was looking at the two documents, the one about Authority Revenue Report for July, and the service fees and the franchise fees seem to have gone up quite a bit than what's in the 12-month report. So is that part of what is being adjusted as you close the books? Because the year-to-date budget for authority service fees is $969, and the actual revenue report says they're now $976, so you're in the black.
Yes, those are part of the things that we settle out as we close out
What
the
the
fiscal year.
treasurer said as you're, okay.
But generally, what you say is correct, is that our projected revenues did come in at or above what we expected for the authority service fees, and they were slightly below what we expected for the franchise fees.
Slightly below, okay. But not a lot below, something like $2,000.
If you add those two things together, it was a net revenue above projections as opposed to.
Okay, because the service fees went up and the other went down. Okay, because I think that, I was just concerned that somehow I was missing 200, there's a deficit somewhere in the revenues, but I didn't see that in the document, so thank you.
Excuse me, I was just saying that the total revenue for 2012 was $3,048,000, and then the total revenue for 2013 year end was $2,850,000. So there was a $200,000 difference in the amount of revenue that came into this agency. So I just want to clarify, those are the figures from the end of 2012, 2013, and we haven't got the figures yet for 2014. It's gone down. So that's, I just want to clarify what I mentioned before.
Okay, next speaker.
Catherine Murray again. Chair Gitlin mentioned the $29,000 that was missing and why public comment doesn't bring that up over and over again. It's because of the cash unannounced,
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold your
spot checks that were done over and over again recently that have showed no cash missing. That's not an issue anymore, Chair Gitlin.
Okay,
That's why it's not being brought up.
We're not talking about that. You had
Thank
your
you.
opportunity to speak. Now, again, I'm going to ask the audience to talk on the subject. We all have an opportunity to speak. It is inappropriate for Ms. Murray to come up here and talk about a subject she knows the rules of protocol. If I made a mistake about taking a vote before the motion or after the motion, mea culpa, I admit that. But that's unacceptable for you to come up and talk about that subject at this time. You had your opportunity during public comments and you chose not to do that, or you didn't bring it up then. So I will ask again, those of you who wish to speak on the subject, which is item number 5.5, discussion and possible approval of a budget revision and transfer for $46,000. Please come up to the dais and speak to the subject. Is there anyone else? Having no one else wish to speak, then I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Move to approve.
And do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to transfer $46,000. Karen, if you would, please.
Commissioner Holloway?
Yes.
Commissioner Ania?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Gitlin?
Yes. Okay, moving on to 5.6. Discussion, possible action regarding reintroduction of ordinance 2014-02, an ordinance of the Board of Commissioners of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority regarding collections, franchises, and mandatory disposition of waste. Mr. Ward, I thought we voted on this. What happened?
I'll ask our legal counsel, Martha Rice, to explain.
So this was brought, I believe, in April, March or April. It was around the same time that the R3 report was coming out. And the reason we have to bring it back was there's a publication mistake. At that time, we had intended to include in the agenda both a marked up version and a clean version so that the board could see what changes we were making. And in putting the documents together, we actually ended up with two of the same sort of marked up draft versions and not the complete and final version. So this was caught when asking the city council to bring it before their board to approve. And so today we're asking that this board reintroduce the ordinance that is sitting in front of you as 2014-02. It includes a longer list of definitions, which is very important so that, you know, when going through the ordinance, you know precisely what we're talking about. It includes a few more provisions regarding disposition of solid waste in franchise terms. I think overall is the reason we brought it back for reintroduction the first time was it's a much improved from the very first draft, and upon your reintroduction of 2014-02 today, it will it will be ready to be on the supervisors and city council agendas for approval.
All right, I'm a little confused. So is this also, does this process also need to be repeated to the Crescent City Council also? The same?
Yes, well, it was never, the
'Cause
city
I think
council
they've
hasn't
also voted on
deliberated
it.
on this yet.
I'm sorry.
No, the council hasn't yet considered this or the other ordinances.
Okay,
We're studying.
All right, so there's been no vote on, I know we haven't added the county, and I'm presuming there's
Correct.
been no vote at the city level.
Ours is anticipated in September.
All right, so we'll open it up to the public at this time. This is item number 5.6, action regarding reintroduction of ordinance 2014-02, an ordinance of the Board of Commissioners of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority regarding collections, franchises, and mandatory disposition of waste. Public comments, please. Seeing none, we'll move back and take it back to the board.
You got a public comment.
Do we have a public comment? Excuse me, Mr. Lonsdale? Please come up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Lonsdale again. Just a quick question, and it's based on procedure. Is it necessary, since this supersedes an ordinance that your board has passed, even though it hasn't been validated by either the city council or the board of supervisors, is it necessary to somehow rescind your previous ordinance that you have passed?
I'm going to defer to legal counsel on that.
None of the previous two ordinances, 2014-01, 2014-02, neither of them were adopted by this board. They've only been introduced.
Very good. All right, Mr. Balanceo, clear on that? Any other public comments? Come up.
Elizabeth Henry County. I just want to lodge my disapproval and dismay that you took out the responsibility aspect of this ordinance. It's what I said before, and I kind of feel like I don't want to let this go by and imply that, you know, that I approve or some others approve of the form this ordinance has taken. I still think you should go back to where the responsibility part is a part, and I hope maybe the city and the county would consider that when they consider. I still think you are going backwards, and that the changes coming from the state, you at some point are going to need to have some enforcement ability. So anyway.
Thank you. Additional comments from the public? I see none.
You got another public comment.
Okay. I'm trying. I'm looking around here. I'm looking for movement. Anybody who's moving in the audience, so come up.
Catherine Murray, I agree with what Ms. Henry said.
Okay, and any additional comments at this time? I see none. So we'll bring it back to the board.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? On the ordinance, for the ordinance 2014-02?
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Wilson. And we will have our vote on this now.
Can we clarify the motion, please?
Okay. The motion is the introduction of ordinance number 2014-02, an ordinance by the Board of Commissioners of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority regarding collections, franchises, and mandatory disposition of waste.
What I meant was, is this to introduce, waive the reading, and read in title only of this ordinance?
It's a reintroduction.
Yes.
It's a reintroduction. I'll read this again because we have voted on this and we've done this before, except there were some clerical issues that we have to iron out. So,
I think what she's saying is, do we vote on this today and then have to vote at our next meeting?
I just wanted to make sure, I understand what you're trying to do. I just wanted to make sure that the motion was worded correctly, and I got it. You guys know
Okay.
what I'm talking about. I'm good.
okay, so let's take the vote on it.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Ania?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
And Chairman Gitlin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5.7, acknowledge and file 2013 annual report submitted to the California Department of Resources, Recycling, and Recovery, otherwise known as Cal Recycle. Mr. Ward?
This report was not available at the time that the agenda was published, so I've handed it out, and you all have a copy in front of you. this has been submitted, and so it can now be received and filed if the board so chooses. If you care to discuss it further, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you for doing that. I
Appreciate
know
that.
how busy you are, and deadlines do get passed. Thank you for doing that so quickly.
Can you please remind me again why the tonnage figure on here is different than the tonnage figure that turned in for the state of California?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to excuse myself from the meeting. I've got a daycare situation, and I've got to go, and I think we're done with the action items, I think, at that point.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Sullivan.
The Board of
And-
Equalization numbers that you had previously given me?
I'd have to look at exactly what those numbers are. These numbers should be very close. There are some slight differences because sometimes there are facilities, for instance, that take asbestos that are down south that will sometimes receive materials from Crescent City or from Del Norte County in general, and then the state will tabulate those, but I don't necessarily receive those numbers in real time. I think you'll find that the numbers are fairly close.
Because last year, I seem to remember the 17,000 tons on this report, but the figures that you had given me for the trend analysis, it showed that there was 20,000 tons last year. And so that's why I'm just
I'd
asking.
be happy to review those if I can look at the details of what we're talking about.
That's quite a significant difference.
And, well, the state will pull things out and add things in, and it's just important that we're just talking apples to apples.
Right.
Okay, so the action item on this is simply to file it, and that's by consensus of this board. Do we have consensus? We do. Okay. Mr. Ward, if you would, file that 2013 annual report submitted to the California Department of Resource Recycling and Recovery, CalRecycle. Okay, we'll move on now to Director and Treasurer's Report, Acting Director's Report 6.1. Mr. Ward?
Okay, I'll try to go through this quickly, but it is all written in front of you. We've scheduled an 8-hour refresher hazardous waste operators training on September 4th at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. That will probably be the last hurrah from Larry Sweetser of the Environmental Services JPA, essentially from our years of prior memberships with RCRC. Essentially, he had written us into a prior grant, and that's included in this training. But probably in years future, we won't be able to do that as cost effectively. We did staff and we're another year of proud sponsorship of the Del Norte County Fair. I'd like to thank for Chair Gitlin and Vice Chair Holly and Wes White of Hambro WSG and Tom Sparrow of Recology and Jordan Kekry of Julinda Recycling, all for helping out as volunteers in our booth in addition to the staff of the authority. We did complete an information request to Bickmore associated with other post-employment benefits, and we believe that we will have that report submitted by the end of the month. We did file the annual stormwater monitoring reports for the Del Norte County Transfer Station and the Crescent City Landfill. I'm busy preparing the semi-annual report to the Regional Water Quality Control Board pertaining to the landfill, but that is past due. That's a little bit of a concern in that later this week, Gina Morrison will be up to inspect the Crescent City landfill, and so there's a little bit of awkwardness in that not having that report complete.
Can you ask them to visit you at a different time of the year, as July and August, or kind of the crunch months like you described?
Well, I could ask, but just like when this board asked me to do something, when a regulatory agency asked me to do something, I try very hard to say yes.
Yeah, I've had luck with that before as far as inspectors that come. I try and see if they can come at a convenient time as opposed to.
And she's not visiting today, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Doesn't hurt to ask, that's.
Okay. We did complete the electronic annual report. Next month, we will be doing a very comprehensive monitoring we do every 5 years called the Constituent of Concern Monitoring out at the Crescent City Landfill. That will be a significant effort to give you just a brief snapshot of how big an effort this is compared to most times. Mostly when we do the monitoring at the landfill, it takes 3 coolers for all of the bottles that are being sampled. This round of sampling will take 40 coolers. It's that much larger. It's a much, much larger effort, and consequently more expensive, and we're analyzing more constituents. I did speak with Mike O'Donnell of the Mattress Recycling Coalition. Under law SB 254, which has already been adopted and passed in the state, starting in 2016, there will be a statewide producer responsibility program to recycle mattresses. I was recently at a recycling conference, and it was explained that part of the provisions of this recycling law is that all facilities in California will receive mattresses for no charge from the public, which is, that would be exciting. However, the money needs to flow properly because we do have contractual obligations to Hambro Waste Solutions Group in terms of their handling charge for mattresses, and I've shared those costs with the Mattress Recycling Coalition, but we'll have to watch closely as to how this develops, because while they did say that they want to make sure that this works for rural areas, I did notice in the people who are talking to them about the development of this program, no one was from the rural areas. They are talking about having outreach to the Regional Council of Rural Counties, but as this board may be aware, we are no longer members of the Regional Council of Rural Counties. And so if we want to make sure this program works for us, then we need to remain engaged on that. And so that is what I'm hoping to do. We have repaired the metal flaps. Well, we've started to repair the metal flaps and safety painting of bumper stops at the Klamath and Gasky transfer stations. So folks who visit the Klamath transfer station can see those improvements right away. And Gasky we will be working on shortly. We believe that we'll be able to submit our OPEB report by the end of the month. While I was at the recycling conference, I did meet with Sean Birchall of Call to Recycle, specifically regarding ways that Hambro WSG could reduce the cost of processing and shipping alkaline batteries. So I think we had a successful result, and hopefully we'll start implementing that before the end of the month. Other things, we have also begun the annual vegetation control activities out at the landfill. I'd like to thank and acknowledge Rick Lockstead of the County Engineering Department who's helping out with that. And specifically, we've had a combine mower mowing up the top deck, and we're still making arrangements for working on the side slopes and the down drains. Like I said, there will be an inspection of the Crescent City landfill tomorrow. And you see the list of things that we have up ahead. It's quite a long list, but one thing I did neglect to mention is that there will be a free composting workshop at the Family Resource Center Friday, August 22nd that I will be offering from 1:30 to 3. So if people are interested in learning more about backyard composting, that's the opportunity to find out. Be happy to answer any questions about the director's report.
Commissioners? Okay.
I'd like to make a recommendation. I had an opportunity to go and meet with Mr. Ward regarding this list of major activities, and it's my opinion that item number 2 was added to his plate at the time that the R3 report was put on, and basically it says to conduct the analysis of the small volume transfer stations in Klamath and Gasky, operational costs and service options to meet those needs of the residents and business in these areas of Del Norte County. And with the intent, when we added that to his plate, it was to be part of the R3 analysis. And I would like to make the recommendation that other than his normal oversight of those, that he have it taken off his list to compile a report specific to the operational costs and service options for those areas. Again, where I think it's unnecessary at this point in time. We decided not to move forward with it. You have, another R3. We didn't want to pay for it to have someone else do it, and I just, I think it's something that is not really necessary.
Commissioners? Comments?
Just that it's kind of a placeholder, but certainly he could take it off
Yeah.
of this until we get to a place where we can evaluate. I think at some point we still need to have it evaluated because we know it's a money-losing proposition in both those communities.
It always will be.
We're here, it may always be, but it doesn't always have to be done either.
Mhm.
So anyway, I think it's something to keep in mind in the back of our minds that it's something that needs to be evaluated, but I agree. In the foreseeable future, you're not going to be able to get to it.
So take one of those 12 out.
I'd be happy to do that.
For
Okay,
now.
so we don't need to have a discussion at the next agenda, and this can be based on your priority, Mr. Ward? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have the acting director's report, treasurer controller's report for June 2014. I thought I saw Mr. Taylor here, but you're gonna make that report? You retired? Okay.
Clinton Shedd, Delaware County Auditor
Absolutely,
Controller.
thank you.
Mr. Taylor asked me to read you 3 numbers. He had another engagement to be at. He wanted me to read the cash for solid waste for June 30th was $542,844. Your impressed cash is $3,000. And your iBank loan deposit held by the county is $198,177.17.
Shad, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I have never heard that term, impressed cash. What's that mean?
That's your petty cash.
Say, oh,
Petty cash held on site for
Learned a
making,
new word.
for
Thank
making
you.
change bags, and that's your impressed cash. And that was actually upped last meeting. It was a smaller amount, and you approved to up that due to the summer months and the volume. And so there it is.
Any other questions for Auditor Controller Mr. Shad, who is speaking for Mr. Taylor right now? Okay, we'll move on.
Part
I'm
of
sorry, go ahead,
your
Mary.
report is on the back of 6.2. My biggest concerns were basically looking at the payroll for this month, and I saw again that it was $13,000, which is the expense, but when I got down to the employee benefits section, I noticed that it is it's over 50%, it's 55%. It was $7,200 for the benefits on a $13,000 payroll. So I was concerned, normally it should be in the $40% range, but it's 55%. I assume that there's expenses going on with benefits. Are they raising? Because that's, again, over 50%.
We'll have to look at it.
Yeah.
I take a look at it for sure.
Yeah, so.
I mean, the benefit package is going up. PERS goes up every year. Health insurance has actually stayed the same, but without me looking into that question, I can't answer it on the fly.
Yeah, I had talked to Mr. Ward about it, and he felt it was.
We can always
same.
pull the detail. It's not.
Yeah, it's just getting expensive. It's good for everybody to know. The benefits package is over 50% of what the payroll was.
Yeah, that's, I'm not going to tell you that number is absolutely correct. I hope it is, but there may be something in there that we have to look at. But the benefit packages for government and county employees, city employees, solid waste employees, up and down the state of California is high. And we pay, a lot in PERS just for miscellaneous employees. We pay just for, law enforcement, we're paying over 35% or better, just for PERS, before there's any health benefits, before there's life insurance, before there's anything else. So it costs a lot. I mean, it's a pretty good benefit package, and it does cost quite a bit of money.
And if you deal with a percentage of the total payroll, and we have employees that aren't maybe paid as well as other employees, then that percentage gets really out of
When you
whack.
look at things like health benefits, currently the solid waste authority follows the same health benefit plan as the county, where each department, in this case your own department, pays $10,000 per employee for health benefits. Well, when you have an employee that say makes $60,000 to $70,000, that's a smaller percentage, but that new employee who maybe is making $10, $11 an hour now is paying 50% of their pay, or comparable pay, is going into health benefits. So, it's not for health benefits, it's not a percentage of pay, it's a static number that, depending on how much you make, is a higher or lower percentage. And you are charged for that regardless if that employee is filled or vacant. It's based on FTE.
Yeah, I just was curious, because I knew the sheriff's department went up $526,000 in cost in 1 year alone, so I just am curious what the expenses are going up just on employee benefits. So I noticed that, and then the other thing I saw was that we got an adjustment for workers' comp.
Yeah, I can speak to that for sure. So what happened there, I talked with Director Ward about that yesterday. started a couple of years ago when I got into office. We were looking at different funds, and we noticed our unemployment insurance fund was quite large. And we're a self-insured county, which makes all of our quasi-agencies self-insured as well. And we were charging out 1% of payroll for unemployment insurance. And I don't know, that's going back to 1980s or 90s, I don't know when that started. It was a long, long time ago. And the amount of money in that fund had grown and grown and grown to the point where we had quite a large amount of money that we did not need. When we have a lot of claims, then obviously it would be depleted, but for a long period of time, we didn't have claims against that money being held. So we had to go through it, figure out what is a reasonable amount of money to hold. And we decided a 3-year average was a reasonable amount of money, took what was left over, had to go through that figure out which agency, which department had paid into that as a percentage, and return those funds back to the agencies. So that number shows a return of funds that had been held that we felt was too much to hold. It was super funded, so we had to return that. We chose to return that money back, which was the right thing to do.
Well, thank you. That's excellent work. Yeah, thank you.
I'm just curious, Mr. Shad, and I know you made reference to the deficit position we're in right now. Do any of these PERS benefits affect our deficit? Is that any way, shape, form? And you mentioned we're $15,000 in the red right now. Would this be exacerbated by?
Well, your current year budget accounts for all those PERS increases, the one that you've approved. What happened this last fiscal year that put you in the red was just to be aware, a lot of the expenses that were approved and moved around were never part of those funds. So if this year we go forward and you spend, instead of $20,000, which was budgeted last year in professional services, and you spend $84,000 again, and you turn around, instead of spending $4,000 in the treasury expenses, you spend $18,000 again, and yeah, you're going to be in the red again. You can't continue to run that rate. But if you stay within the budget lines, and even as a total budget, expenditures versus revenues, you should be okay, and those are accounted for in that budget.
Okay.
Can I, and also for the public, we were given a credit of about $7,300 in our workers' comp line, which was a very, very nice adjustment. It's quite a bit of money.
Is Richie done?
All right. Stay just for a moment, because we're going to have another report on claims approved by Treasurer Director. This is 6.3 for July 2014. Again, Mr. Taylor normally makes these reports to us. Mr. Ward, do you have information? And then, or is that Mr. Shad's department?
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Claims approved. I'm wondering where are we on the aging sheet? Is that 6 point?
The aging sheet is under AR aging, which is under item, next item.
Okay, so that's 6.4.
6.4, correct.
Yes, okay. I want to get ahead of myself.
Go
ahead, 6.3.
The only thing I noted on 6.3 was there was a $1,080 payment to Progressive for a new part-time temporary employee. And when I called about that, I found that was for car insurance, which is very, in its annual payment. So the line almost seemed as if it were for one employee, the way it was written, but actually it's the bulk insurance for everybody that drives the work trucks. So that's the one that really jumped out at me.
All right, any other comments on 6.3 on claims for either Mr. Shad or Mr. Ward on this? Seeing none? Okay, we'll move on to 6.4. And I think we're okay with you finishing off, Mr. Shad. Thanks for your excellent report for Mr. Taylor. Commissioner Nia, did you have a comment? I'm sorry.
Thank you for staying.
You bet. Okay, monthly cash and charge reports for July 2014. Mr. Ward?
Well, you can see what's in front of you. Generally, it's a fairly typical July, so things are busy. The AR aging report, honestly, we're still going through staff transitions in our accounting department, and so we are training Lori Paulson as an account clerk, and Lisa Babcock is serving as administrative assistant, and we're still using Keith Estes, who is a refuse site attendant, but helping us out very much with what he's been doing in the office. But consequently, with all these transitions, we are still a little bit behind in terms of our attention that we would like to devote to our AR aging. And we have sent letters, and we still would very much like to implement a accounting. We need to get this additional staff in the accounting department in place because we have backlog of material that needs to be entered into the QuickBooks system so we can assess late charges for some of our overdue accounts, which we think is a very critical step in reducing the number of overdue accounts that are on this aging summary. So that's current status, but I'd be happy to answer any specific questions.
Commissioners?
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I don't know why. I think it was in my sleeping hours. I was thinking about this aging summary and wondering if there isn't some way to stop people from entering, if they're 90 days overdue with their bill, why do we let them keep discharging their stuff? I mean, there should be, but I know that they go through and you don't really know who they are until they come back out.
Well, generally, we do stop this. Some of those accounts that are 90 days overdue, some of those businesses have gone out of business. No. And so there's no way to recover on them, but we haven't the extra staff to catch up to where we need to be so that we can have everybody agree, the county, our treasurer controller, and our internal system all agree, okay, we're going to write these off now. Because that, justifiably, everybody needs to buy into, okay, we're writing these off. That needs to be a process that we all buy into. But we also need the staff to bring up the records to speed so that everybody can see the documentation as to why we suggest writing these off. Some have been referred to collections agencies, some are out of business, as I said.
But if we look at some of these, would they still be able to use the facility even though they have an outstanding bill that's 90 days or more outstanding? Because I don't know, I just can't figure out strategically how you'd stop them from coming in.
Well, we do put holds on accounts, and we do have account amounts. For instance, when we establish a new account, we'll ask people how much they're going to use the facility, and if they bump up against that limit, then they're on hold until they pay their bill.
But you don't know that until they come around and they start going out, right? Isn't that kind of awkward?
You know what? I think they could know. There's only 2 or 3 gate attendants that see the same companies.
Okay.
I would think they would know when they pull up, this is so-and-so company and they owe us $100,000.
Typically, if it's a larger one, we've been in contact. We've had that conversation. And for our larger customers, for example, some of the roofing companies will have large outstanding balances. And once they get the phone call, oftentimes the check is forthcoming. So even with a large balance, with a good customer, we want to have them continue to be able to use the facility. So it's a give and take.
The gate should just slam down.
I think when you get to be full staff and you post these and you get companies that you have to call every month, I don't think you ought to be doing the calling. I think when they get to the gate, you turn them around and they'll get a check and come back because they have to dump that stuff somewhere. They're going to come back. I know what you're saying, but you shouldn't have to make those calls every month.
Well, what we're hoping to do, what we'd like to do once we get caught up, is to impose a system where late charges just get assessed. I believe part of the reason why some of these account balances haven't been paid is some folks will choose to not pay the bills that don't have penalties associated with them. And
I like that. I like the late fee. I'll take that. That's good. That'll balance the budget.
Can you refresh my memory? I know that there was several pages, I think of the end of last year, that we were going to write off. Now, I'm not, what happened with that?
Well, we still have that listing, but again, we've been scrambling with the staff that we have in the accounting responsibilities of the agency, and we've not gotten caught up to the point where we can have that list, go have the meeting with the treasurer and the auditor controller and
well, if I can just intercede just for a second, if I just may.
I'm not quite finished yet. Were those bad checks, or were they?
Many of them were bad checks. And the county is not necessarily tracking those, for example. But they're on our system, and again, we want to make sure that we're all above board before we write any debt off.
Hopefully, at the end of the year, we can, to get rid of bad debt.
I totally concur with that, but we should be aware that, for instance, the bad debt that we had for the fiscal year 12-13 has still not been written off.
I know,
Same thing's
the
true for
accounts
13-14.
receivables driving me
We
crazy.
are behind in this regard.
Is it the, and I'm going to include you in this comment, Commissioner Wilson, is it your feeling you'd like to have these matters turned over to collection agencies sooner, perhaps in a 90-day period or a 60-day period?
I think that it's been a very hard year with the bookkeeper having personal problem or personal issues, family issues, and is almost 5 months away from the authority, and so she was just at the point where she was going to move ahead with this, and then there seems to be, unfortunately, issues that pop up in her family, and then it's back to square one again. So as soon as we get back close, it just seems to, something seems to happen. I mean, that's just an extraordinarily amount of time for someone in a key position not to be at work. It's been difficult, I think, definitely for this entire board, but certainly for Mr. Ward, having the person that's supposed to be in charge of these things not there. And I know the county auditors had done quite a bit of work, and then that just all kind of fell apart because she...
Well, I'm concurring with you, and
So I don't think there's a lot we can do.
Well, what I don't want to do is pile more work on you. I'm not having you getting into this collection business, and that's why I'm more apt to think about an intervention where there's a collection agency where we get half of something is better than all and nothing. And again, your time is too valuable that you should be on the phone, let's say with the U.S. Forest Service, talking to some bureaucracy and the checks coming. And by the way, I don't see them on the AR report. Has Forest Service paid up?
Yes, I believe we've made some good progress on the Redwood National State Parks, and that amount has gone down quite a bit.
That was quite a bit of money, if I'm not.
Yes, yes, and it still was a fairly...
$12,000.
It was a good amount of money.
Park, still there.
Now, what are we looking at?
Redwood National Park.
At what?
$11,000.
11,008. Okay, page 5. All right. Well,
page 5.
Two things occur to me, and we're spending a good deal of time on this AR report. Two things occur to me when I look at first the columns 60 to 90, and I look at numbers, all numbers, and they're including little amounts, and I'm wondering. Yeah, I'm looking at the other page. Thank you, Mary. I'm looking at, for instance, Schnacker's General Hauling owes $7. I mean, it seems funny that it's 190 days old and they're current, and then they have a $7 charge on there. And I know that's not something I want you to dwell a lot of time with. I'm just curious about things like that. And of course, the big numbers. When I see something that has thousands in it, I'm looking at Reservation Ranch. Did they make a payment? I see a negative $1,008.59. Redwood Park, National Park, only owes, according to this, $532. This sheet that I'm looking at here. And this is on this right here. Aging Summary, yeah, page 2. Okay, so what am I looking at?
$11,000.
All right, all right.
Do
we have conflicting reports?
I'm sorry.
I'm looking at page 2 of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority Aging Summary.
And unfortunately, this particular report rolled over to multiple pages, and so, for instance, you'll see in pages 1 through 3, you've got current, the 1 through 30 days old, 31 through 60 days old, and 61 through 90 days old.
Yeah.
And then pages 4 through 6 include over 90 days and the total. So it's a little disjointed, again.
Is there a way, and again, every time I'm saying this, I'm thinking I don't want to put more work on you, Ted, but is there a way to coalesce and to present this aging report in a different kind of summary rather than the small 6-point font, and then it's on 2 different pages? Because I'm looking at something and I just don't see a problem, then I'm looking at another page and I see a problem with essentially the same client. Is there a way to coalesce these into just
I can try to spend more attention on this. However, I'm encourage you to appreciate that we have not had stability in the accounting for this agency for about 18 months. We are still busy trying to train people so that we are addressing that issue, but we are still in a period of transition. And so it's difficult with such a lack of stability to refine and improve that which we're doing, because we are not yet caught up with that which we are expected to do without any changes.
And honestly, I don't feel that the amount owed, the $16,240 that's over 90 days, that's not that much. I mean, the biggest one is Redwood National Park,
which is
I
nearly
don't-
resolved.
I think it's reasonable. That just kind of comes with the territory. I think we spend an awful lot of time on this, and there's really, I would just let it go. I mean, honestly.
Well, nobody wants to leave money on the table.
I know it,
And
but it just-
when we're talking about, we have a slight deficit, and I'm one to, just by nature, do everything we can. And again, ask you in almost a rhetorical way, Mr. Ward, what help can we give you collection-wise to make your life easier and collect even $16,000, which is 90 days old?
The park's got to redo their system. and-
We're almost to resolution with the parks. I believe that we will be there within the next month.
Yeah.
That, as you point out, that's $11,000 out of the 16,000.
That's not
So
bad.
that's a big chunk.
Yeah, so.
So I believe we're making good progress on this, and I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the attention of the board. And I suppose what can you give us is just a little patience.
Yeah, and the one guy went out of business here, you said, so I mean,
There are a couple of
we're
those,
just gonna
yes.
have to
Well,
write a couple of these off, and
I'm
that's
not
just,
anticipating the U.S. Forest Service is going to go out of business.
well, the other $2,000 one here, but other than that, I think it's reasonable. I think it's fine.
Someone once told me a long time ago, watch the pennies and the dollars take care of themselves. So, 6.5, earned revenue comparisons, fiscal year 13-14, fiscal year 14-15. Ted?
So you can see that we are well ahead of our budget for the authority revenue, and just a little bit below budget in terms of the franchise fees. The budget for authority revenue was scaled down slightly as we drafted this budget, so I anticipate that in the coming year we will consistently see that our authority revenues exceed our budget.
Commissioners, comments? Okay, I think we've covered pretty much the whole agenda, so unless there are any further comments from commissioners here, we will adjourn to the next special meeting of the Solid Waste Authority for 2 p.m., August 21st, and it will not be at the Board of Supervisors chambers. Excuse me, it will be at the Washington Boulevard Firehouse. The exact address, I'm going to say, is 550, is that correct? 500 block, am I? 301? All right, does everybody know where that is? Okay, it's the firehouse, and it will be there, not at the, here in this chamber. Okay, meeting is,
301 School District office.
okay, okay.
Right next to 301.
Okay, thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.
The thing